Our new unit, what we're going to be doing is looking at complex numbers. In algebra, we talk about real numbers, and there's two different types of real numbers. There's rational numbers and irrational. Rational numbers are fractions, whole numbers, negative numbers, numbers that we know the ending digit of or have a repeating digit. Irrational numbers are numbers that we don't know the ending digit. They keep on going forever. Now we're coming up with another category, which is imaginary numbers. Imaginary numbers are numbers that have the letter I in it, and the I stands for imaginary numbers. And what the imaginary number is it's the square root of a negative. So mathematicians have not been able to solve a negative one. So what they did was they came up with uh, an I, which stands for the square root of a negative one. So since we can't find a square root of a negative, what we do is we use the letter I to represent what a square root of a negative is. So what we're going to do is we're going to be plotting the different points. And when we're plotting them on the complex plane, what we're going to do is we're going to treat the real numbers as our x values and our imaginary numbers as our y values. So we're going to think of this as an ordered pair. So what we have is our coordinate system. The real axis is our real numbers, and the imaginary axis is our imaginary numbers. So when we're plotting them, we're going to start off with 2 plus 3i. So we're going to go to the right 2, and then we're going to go up 3. And that right there is 2 plus 3i. Remember, what we're doing is we're writing it pretty much like an ordered pair. The real number is the x value, the imaginary number is the y value. So for letter B, we have 3 minus I. That means we go to the right 3, and then we go down 1. For letter C, what we have is negative 2i. That means there's no real number, so we don't go left or right. We just go down 2. For D, we have, notice that it's switched. So technically it's negative 5, 4. And so what we do is we go to the left 5 and we go up 4. For letter E, what we have is a positive 5, so we go to the right 5. Then we have I, that means we just go up 1. For G, what we have is left 4 and down 5. And then our last one, I plus 2 would be the same thing as 2 plus I. So we would go to the right 2 and up 1. So that right there is plotting on the complex plane. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get into the different I values. We know that I is the square root of negative 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to represent I as I. I squared would be the same thing as the square root of negative 1 times the square root of negative 1, because that's what I is. And when we multiply those two, what we end up with is negative 1. Meaning that I cubed would be negative 1 times I, which is negative I. And I to the fourth would be the same thing as negative 1, because that's I squared, times negative 1. And that's how we're getting the positive 1. Now, when you multiply it by another I, that would be I to the fifth, what you end up with is I. And so what happens is that the pattern just keeps on repeating. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that in order to solve for C through F. But let's look at example 2. And we're going to simplify this. So the square root of 4 we know is 2, but because of the negative, we're going to call that 2i. For the next one, 8 would be 4 and 2 and negative 1. We know the square root of 4 is 2, so it's 2 square root of 2. And then the square root of negative 1 is I. So it's 2I square root of 2. Now, I to the 20th. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these values and I'm going to divide them by 4. This one goes in evenly, so that means that our answer is 1. It's divisible by 4. For this next one, I'm going to divide it by 4. It means that it rotates lots of times. And what we do is we figure out what the remainder is, and the remainder is 2, or 0.5 if you divide it on a calculator. That means that our answer is negative 1. It would be I squared. 101, we divide it by 4. It's going around 25 times, and then one more. If you divide it using the calculator, you'll get 0.25, which means that it's remainder 1, and that means our answer is I. And then if we divide 215 by 4, it's going around, let's see, 25, 50, 54 times with a remainder of 53 times with a remainder of 3. Or if you use a calculator, you get 0.75. So that means it's I to the third, which we know is negative I. Pause the video and try these next ones. So the square root of negative 49 is 7I. 12 we know is 4 and 3. And since it's a negative, what we're going to do is we're going to do the square root of negative 1. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I, so it's 2I square root of 3. 11, what we're going to do is divide that by 4, and we get a remainder of 3, or if you're using a calculator, 0.75, so that means it's I to the third, which of course is negative I. If we divide 61 by 4, we're going to get a remainder of 1, or 0.25, which means that it's I. If we divide 500 by 4, it goes in evenly. That means our answer is 1. And if we divide 2,222 by 4, what we get is a remainder of 2, or 0.5, which means that our answer is negative.